never been here before. Wow.
Awesome.
Oh, we're so glad. We're so glad you're here. Welcome. And have any of you who have never been here before studied Buddhism in any form? Or is this really new to you? New to you?
New.
Or, yeah, new to you? Okay. Okay, good. Because this is a, quote, public talk for anybody to walk into, we will try very hard to be clear about what we're saying for everybody in the room. If there's anyone at any point that wants to ask a question or can't follow what I'm saying or simply disagrees or wants to bring up something, please feel free to do that. The point of our being here is you. So if you are confused by us, we've failed. So to prevent that, please feel free to ask us anything that you would like, even during the teaching. Just raise your hand.
What if I'm confused by me?
And I'm
Epic
sorry,
fail
you have to go
from the
home.
start. I'll confess to get the ball rolling. I'm often confused by me.
All right, let's start, shall we, with we usually begin a teaching by making an offering to the Buddha out of gratitude for what we've been given, what we've been taught, the ways that his experiments with his life have helped us. And we take refuge in what he represents. So while this is a Buddhist center, this is a universal set of teachings. Every great religious tradition has much in common. And Buddhism has a great deal in common with the great teachings of love and of wisdom of every tradition. So I will offer this in as universal a way as I can. But let's close our eyes. And for a moment, really come into the room, just relax in your chair. Feel where your body makes contact with your chair, with your cushion, with the good earth that's supporting you. It is good to be here. Let your face relax, your eyes, your temples, your jaw, your neck, your shoulders. We offer this world and the attempts we make to see it as perfect. The beautiful ocean, the rocks, the marshes, the woods, the sunsets, the heat, the storms, the air conditioning. We offer up our attempts at practice, our desire to seek the good in ourselves and in others, our courage to learn how to be happy, to be bigger, to be braver. We offer this at the feet of the Buddha and everything the Buddha represents. all enlightened beings are working together. We take refuge in the Buddha, in an enlightened being, the very idea of an enlightened being. We take refuge in the Dharma, in the great teachings that beings have left for us on this earth. We take refuge in the group that's here, that we call the Sangha, like-minded people, seekers. We take refuge in the Buddha. We take refuge in the Dharma. We take refuge in the Sangha. We take refuge in the Buddha, the highest aspect of ourselves. We take refuge in the Dharma. May we be forever learning. We take refuge in the Sangha. May we, with a small group like this, begin to practice how to behave the way divine beings would behave toward each other, and take that into the world.
First of all, it's really good to be back in Rockport and Cape Ann. It's such an amazing place, and I've been away for a bit, and I'll be here for a bit, so it's nice. See, it's all changing. And we had an experience. You know, you can kind of get stuck in thinking it's of one flavor or one tone, or this is all brand new. And last night we went to a really cool talk at the Anasquam Village Library. They get together every couple of weeks, I think, or monthly, and they have historical talk. And this one was about an event that happened over 100 years ago. You know, new, right? That I might have been one of the first incursions of a really great realized spiritual teacher from the East coming to the West and teaching. And his name was Swami Vivekananda, right? So here's a little factoid for you that you might not have known. So they invited him. He made his arduous trip from India, and he came to the World Exposition in Chicago in 1893. And there they had a parliament of religious leaders, and they asked him to speak. And they're very nervous about it at first, because they're like, who is this guy? And he looks funny. You know, for a lot of people, this was the first time they'd set eyes on this very exotic and mysterious figure, and you know, he had robes on and a turban, very handsome, piercing eyes and dark skin, and they said what are his qualifications. And so after some hemming and hawing, someone pointed out to them, you know, the sun doesn't need a qualification; it just shines. So you know, it doesn't need you know, papers. And I guess from the moment he spoke, what was his first words? Brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters of America. And everybody at the exposition stood up.
Yeah. It was, he had them at the get-go. And so he made this address, and so his first public teaching was at the Anasquam Village Church in 1893. He'd gone to Boston, and some you know, progressive thinkers and people who spent summers up here said, "Oh, you have to come up to Anasquam to speak." And I can't remember the professor. I think it was an MIT or Harvard professor, a woman.
Greek.
We saw on the train.
Greek, a woman. The woman wasn't the professor.
Okay.
The woman was a socialite. Her name was Sanborn. I can't remember her first name. She was a socialite who, he had arrived a month early. I mean, travel was a little different, a little unpredictable then. He had arrived a month early, and he is on a train, and he meets this woman, Ms. Sanborn, who's a Boston socialite, who's quite taken with him, and who gets him in touch with a professor of Greek at Harvard, classics professor, who spends time with him and realizes this is an amazing being. And when at the parliament he was trying to get in to be one of the speakers, they said, "You don't have any credentials," and that's when the professor wrote them and said, "Does the sun need credentials to shine?" And got him in.
Yeah, Wright, I think his name was.
Right, yeah.
So at any rate, so
That's
he invited him up. He came and he spoke at the Annisquam Village Church in 1893, and then spent the summer up on 8 Arlington Street, up the street from our house. And so sometimes we think, yeah, this place has been happening for a long time in a lot of different ways. So I just thought it was an amazing story, and it just made me very kind of inspired about how many amazing people and ideas are held in this really creative and kind of holy place. And I felt really cool because we got married in that church. So at any rate, sometimes Lindsay and I teach separate, sometimes we teach together, and sometimes we do formal teachings and old school stuff and new school stuff. And this is kind of almost an informal exploration. We were sitting on our porch the other day, and we just kind of started reviewing our summer. And we've had, it's amazing to be here and wonderful, but we also, it's been a tough summer in some ways. We've lost some people, friends and people in our family in really different ways. One we lost who was able to end their life in a very mindful and incredibly instructive way, in a way that was inclusive and beautiful. Another one who was taken, by storm, kind of literally, a relative who was caught in the surf in California, and they couldn't revive him, and they, had to let him go. My mom had surgery and dealing with that, and so we started thinking about the idea of, there's nothing more fun than going to a really cool Dharma talk, at least for us. That's and being inspired, and when a Dharma talk is great, and when and I'm not giving you an expectation for us, but I'm saying when you go to one and it is, and you're kind of in the right zone, personally, and you're feeling good, the medicine goes down really well. And it's great, and it's breezy, and it's nice, and you go home and talk about it. I said to Lindsay, I said, it's kind of like, going to the feel-good date movie, and it's great. And Dharma should be inspirational, but what about when you're not in the zone, when you're having a crappy day? When you get fired from work, or you have someone who's ill, or you're not feeling well, what about then? So we thought it might be nice to explore with you guys and start to pull the taffy a little bit here about that we have to remember that to pull its inspiration when things aren't going well too. It's easy to do when it's going great, and it's easy to plug into that. But what about when it's not, and maybe you can think about a time when that might have been happening, and think about whether or not you found it easy or hard to keep what we call your worldview, kind of like your code of how you want to live your life when the rug gets pulled out from under you a little bit. And we all have that. So we thought about saying, what about when things get bumpy? What about when it's a little turbulent? And because sometimes when we feel the rug gets pulled out from under us, it starts to color our situation. We could have been having a great day, and then we get a phone call or something happens, and all of a sudden the quality of the light outside changes. All of a sudden it's not as sunny. All of a sudden it starts to color, the mirror of our mind, and then we start to see other people in that light, and we start to feel constricted. The spaciousness that we have all of a sudden starts to close in on us. And when it closes in, we feel like sometimes we can't breathe or we can't move. And all of a sudden, everything kind of goes to hell in a handbasket, right? It changes the way we're receiving the world at that point. And it brings up an interesting question. What changed? Did the world change? Did circumstances might have changed, but all of a sudden it seems like the world is different now. The people in it are different. It has a different color and quality, So, can we color our feelings in that way? And what about the feeling when, then you say, well, I got sold a bill of goods, I went to a talk and, I was supposed to get all inspired and everything was supposed to be going great, and then this happened. Something went wrong, or the talk was broken, and we start to point fingers, We start to look for the smoking gun. Often after undertaking a study or pursuing a practice, we might then, go to classes or go to places and say, I'm going to put together what we call a practice, based on principles or a worldview or an idea. I think sometimes when we start, especially when we're new and something goes bump, we immediately go for the warranty, with the assumption that something's broke, it's not working, I better turn this back in. This isn't right, it's broken. And in those moments you have to ask yourself, you might ask yourself, what was the deal that we thought we were getting when we undertook it? What did we think that was the fine print? So in the case of a Buddhist, that I want this worldview and I want to explore ideas of karma and emptiness and things like that, and all of a sudden, something gets bumped, we start to make that situation solid, we start to see the world in a certain way, and then we have to stop and think, what was the deal? Ask yourself, was the deal wait a minute, I went to a class on the Buddha, I thought no more dying, I wouldn't see any more suffering, no more discomfort, our practice would dispel these things, right? So I'm not doing the practice right, or it's false dharma, so what's wrong? And who was the, and what happened to me, But so the next question Lindsay and I started bouncing around with, well, who was the me that you thought was going to get enlightened? Who's the me that's going to get free? How did, in a Buddhist context, how did Lord Buddha describe our world, with the first noble truth, right? He said, I had some news for you, The first truth is the truth that we suffer, and not to be a downer or a bummer, but he's saying, we create suffering in the world. That's the good part. He said, number two is it's caused. It's not like self-existently bouncing around there, because otherwise you have to say, well, what made my day change all of a sudden, right? If it's out there, why wasn't it? At what point did it become this or that? Where do I play a part in this? He said, the first noble truth is life has suffering elements in it, and they're caused. There's a cause to our suffering, and because it's a cause thing, it's the good news is we can change it, and there's something we can do to exact that change. So, we're saying we're going to Wisdom's Heart, and there's a talk, or I'm taking a meditation class, or I'm studying a formal study class. Everything should be fine, So tonight, just as a little intro, we want to talk about when it gets bumpy, because I have this term called spocking, spinning out of control. We spock. We immediately let our gross sense consciousness, that thing that's just surveying the situation that just changed, and seeing that as real and solid and hard, and then the mental afflictions arise, right? And from that we solidify a bad situation. Now we have a bad situation on our hands, right? The thing out there that happened to us that we're going to fight and struggle and try to swim upstream against. It's easy to work at that level, see? And then when you see the bad situation as reified, meaning solid and self-standing, then we try to cut a deal with samsara, right? Samsara is the Buddha had a term for it. He means it's this suffering life, and it wasn't meant to say that everything is horrible in this world, and that everything is bad, and there's no good elements, and there's no beauty, and there's no joy, there's no love. Rather, he said, because the way we're erroneously approaching the world, we cause our suffering by seeing it incorrectly. That's all he's saying. So he says, and that's samsara. That's the world that we create. It's easy to work at that level, but that's a losing proposition too. In the same way that when we talk about who's the me that's going to get enlightened, is trying to cut that deal. Those things don't exist in the way that we think they do. So the problem might not necessarily be changing the external conditions of the world, right? Trying to muscle the world as opposed to seeing the situation when you're in it, understanding where it came from, and then maybe choosing a logical course of action about it, examining it, instead of just constantly responding to the knee-jerk response to say, what part do I play in this? Because we're constantly seeing ourselves here and then this outside world that we're trying to manage and muscle, and the people. If only they were like this, I could be happy. Right? If only I could get this raise at work, then I could be happy. If only it would stop raining I could be happy if it wasn't 99 with humidity. Then I could be happy. And we're constantly saying, if I can just get it all lined up. And see, well, what we're talking about is just never going to be lined up like that. See? Everything's changing all the time. So in order for you to feel happy or settled, if you think you want to muscle external conditions to be happy, you might be in for a real challenge. As opposed to taking the other view and saying, well, and we'll talk about it tonight, if we can maybe to a degree come to some consensus that maybe the world couldn't be just self-standing, that it has something to do with me, then we're in the game a little bit, right? Because the Buddha didn't say with the First Noble Truth, life is suffering, sorry, you're screwed, good night, LA, and leaves town. And the second thing he says, it's a cause to suffering. And cause things are changing things, and changing things, you can put the causes in place to eradicate that. Right? So that's kind of where we're going a little bit. So tonight we talk about identifying how to have a plan for those times and dealing with the bumpy part of the ride to create like some sort of stability or trying to smooth out the bumps. And then maybe we can track back to who we think we are in this situation and what we think the situation itself is. Because situations themselves are relative, right? We have a situation here. It's always, honey, I have a situation here. It's like this thing on a leash you're dragging into the house, right? But they're relative too. For instance, here's a situation in November. Somebody could have gotten maybe 2 phone calls. First phone call, hello, honey. I have bad news. The country's in jeopardy. Romney didn't get elected. Right? Really bad. We're really in trouble. Number 2, honey, I got great news. Everything's going to be okay. Obama got elected. Right? We're working in the same arena here. The situation is either dire or the day was saved. But there couldn't have been anything in and of the situation itself, see, that's dictating that. So it's relative, right? It's perspectival. Right? But often when we're feeling bad and we're hitting the bumps, it doesn't become that. It becomes this thing, and we're going to start chasing it now, and pretty soon the boogeyman's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until we take it out of the closet and put some light on it. It couldn't have been anything in and of the situation itself, but based on our gross observation of what's going on, a whole spectrum of emotions could have been experienced on that night, right? People become, from people becoming very angry to people becoming very happy. People could have wept with joy. To families arguing amongst themselves about it, to people coming to blows. You always see those films, all of a sudden someone's in a parliamentary meeting or politics, and pretty soon they're duking it out on the floor. It's unbelievable. We can lose our perspective, and with the loss of perspective, we lose our compassion for other people in the equation, right? We become absorbed in our own perspective of the situation, and it's our selfishness that almost always causes our unhappiness in that. The fact that we can't hold the situation as anything other than self-existent, that other people could be experiencing it differently, and that other people could have feelings about it too that we need to understand. So for those for whom it was a tragedy, well, let me go another way. So the way I'm coloring and shaping how I'm seeing these situations and other people in the world, and when I wrestle about it to that degree, it throws you out of balance. And when you're out of balance, you become distressed. You lose a sense of ease. And I think it's literally the word disease. You get disease. You get a sense of disease, literally meaning not with ease, and you can even become ill. On the other hand, someone who had just passed, who was given the bad, the quote unquote the bad news. For that person, it's not, the world didn't necessarily change. That person's condition in the world changed. That person's situation changed, and that person changed around it. But because he had this worldview and a practice, he had a choice of how he was going to look at it now. And he was going to surrender to the idea of how the world was for that person existing. Was it is it unnatural to have this happen? Is the problem come with the fact that something is wrong, or because we can't accept the fact that things are changing? And with that change, you know, that we can't have any sense of perspective about it. So what to do? We need to break the chain with some wisdom, starting with, like, what is the nature of the world? Is it hardwired or not? What is the nature of me? Am I this fixed thing in space? Am I fixed in the situation? Am I unlucky? Am I a loser? Am I a winner? Is there a difference between my ultimate nature, what a Buddhist would say my true nature, and the one that I'm binding myself to by relating to the ego as the real me in all of these situations? You know, am I really trapped? When things get challenging, am I trapped? This me that I hold on to as hardwired moving through the world, does that hold up? Or does that cause problems? So that's where we're going to head to. And I just was reading a really cool quote from a great Tibetan teacher, and he said, it's easy to experience the self-existent imagination of yourself I'm talking about. It's not difficult. Right now you can observe and analyze your self-imagined identity. You know, the me you think you are. And because you have preconceptions about the self, you get into trouble. You always criticize yourself. I'm not good enough. If you analyze this way of thinking, you'll understand how you're out of touch with reality. And he said you can understand that right now. Because you cling to such a limited projection of yourself, such a limited self-image, this becomes the root of all your other limitations. You have limited love, you have limited wisdom, you have limited compassion. Because you've already decided that fundamentally you're narrow, your whole life becomes narrow. Your wisdom becomes narrow, your love becomes narrow, everything about you becomes narrow. Just because of your fundamentally narrow projection of yourself. So the first way to break the chain is to start to look, I think, and take some responsibility about where you sit in the situation. Because what we're positing is your options are much wider than that. That there's always an ultimate nature to you that isn't pinned in, that can use actually any situation as a situation, even when it's uncomfortable, to learn a great deal, actually to maybe make the greatest progress. Not that you seek them out, but that you use them. And so the idea was that we're often, when the wave comes, you know, we're at the beach and the big wave comes, right? At first we want to fight it, and we want to, you know, run towards it and hide and duck from it. And what we're saying is the energy of that wave, if you also can look at it differently, you can ride it and surf it, and it can take you somewhere. You can use it, because it's just energy. It's just energy. For the same reason that a surfer can look at it and say, here comes the most awesome ride of my life. You know, I'm going to ride it. I'm going to surrender. Go. So now Lindsay's going to answer all of this, and I'm going to have a refreshing sip of guava nectar.
So for those of you that have just walked into this crazy place, let me just say a few basic things about what Rick has said. None of us are neutral. We came into a particular country, born into a particular land with its own customs and languages, into a particular family, into a particular culture. We were perhaps brought up with a religion, or with certain prejudices within the family, or with ideas that had come down through our ancestry. We have been molded from the very beginning. So we are not objective. And in fact, there isn't a person on the planet who is. But we are constantly looking for an objective truth, aren't we? Really. And we're looking for someone who has that and can give it to us. So the first thing we have to recognize is there is no objective truth like that anyone is going to establish. That means, by extension, that there is no objective experience of the world. And the world is not objective in itself to us, although we try to make it so. We try to make it something that's out there that everybody could agree upon. And one of the ways we get into trouble is by constantly looking for agreement. We form friendships and relationships on the basis of agreement about the world that we see, which we don't share in common with anybody on the planet. You with me? Okay? That's a profound thing to say. Because we want to be held in close relationship with people. We are looking for love. And we think love is based on that kind of agreement. And those that don't agree with us, God help us, you know, we'll kill them. We want to get rid of them. Because it's so hard for us to conceive of how those people, and they could be people at work. I'm not just talking about, you know, countries at war. They could be people at work. How could they? How could that person, how could someone think that way, do that, be that? The minute we start thinking that way, we have rendered ourselves extremely lonely. Because on some level, we can't understand how they could think that way or be that way. And it's frightening, and it seems random, and it seems unfair. And we cut ourselves off. But let's go a little layer deeper. If we come into the world with these sets of likes and dislikes and prejudices, you know, before we're even really conscious of it, we're taught quite a bit, right? We're taking it on as babies. Then we're responsible for what we're seeing, for the particular lenses that we're looking out of, for our perceptions of things. Because as we all know, just from having been in love, the world changes, doesn't it? Things that are normally a pain in the neck are suddenly, wow, it's raining. You know? The rest of the time we're using expletives, right? Nothing is normal. Everything is extraordinary and beautiful and easy to be kind to everyone and generous and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter if we're waiting in line, we can cuddle, you know? Everything's different, has a different potential to it, different taste. That's coming from us. And then we lose it, and we have no idea why did that arise for that small amount of time. It was so delicious and extraordinary, and how could we get it back? And why isn't it arising now? We spend so much time feeling so helpless and really angry, really pissed off, you know? Because we are good people, we're trying. We want to do good in the world. We want to see good in the world. And we just can't make it happen consistently, and it's so frustrating. And there are points in our lives where it's so overwhelming, the frustration, that we, you know, we're looking for medication, anything to just kind of get the head in the feeling, right? But as Rick said, what Buddha said was, Buddha was a scientist, by the way. You know, Buddha was a very interesting person. His parents decided to keep him from the knowledge that the world suffers. It's what every parent tries to do with their children, isn't it? You have a baby, I can tell you. You sit there weeping at the birth, just thinking, this is a chance to start over. This is a chance to get it right. This is a chance to never let this person be disturbed by the things that I was disturbed by, and I'm going to spare them all that pain with my experience. You know, God help you at the point where you can teach them, they don't want to hear you. You know, it's all over. That's not kind of how it works. They have to go through the pain themselves to find their path. Just like Buddha did. Buddha eventually runs into someone who's suffering. He goes, Dad, what's that? Oh, nothing, darling. Look over here. Right? And Buddha eventually became attracted to, wait a minute, this is wrong. This is not right. Just like Rick is saying, there's something wrong here. That's what we all feel. There's something wrong. Every day we feel this, whether it's about pollution, about the government, about the war, whatever war, millions of wars, right? About famine. How can famine happen? What's wrong with people, right? It's so disturbing, and in this day and age, with all of this negative news coming at us, you know, really disturbing, really disturbing. So, but Buddha said a few amazing things. He said, everything is changing. right? Everything is changing a mile a minute. Everything. This table, this telephone, me, Rick, all of you, all cells, atoms, subatomic particles, quarks, and bosons. Pretty soon, way, 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 way down, you can hardly even find it. It's just a field of potential. We are a field of potential.
And I think 2,500 years later, this idea, this early form of the study of perception, and really, I think Robert Thurman, the professor, great professor of Buddhism at Columbia, said, I think you could look at it as either, the Buddha's enlightenment and the Bodhi tree is either a great spiritual innovation, but you could also call it as like a great scientific, what it may be the first form of psychology, or you could argue it might have been one of them. And I just totally lost the thread of
It's all right. Don't worry. It'll come back to you.
I
think what you're saying is, when I started out by saying he's a scientist, that he actually achieved what we keep looking to achieve in the technical field, he achieved internally.
Well, my question was, does anybody not agree with that? I'm sorry, I just had to we all kind of, at this point and in this time and age, I don't think that's a stretch for anybody here. I just want to see where we fall overboard, right? I think we all agree that things are changing. Scientists can even look at the table, right, and they can see that, someone came up with a figure that things change 3 trillion times a second or something like that. So we're all good with that, right? Okay.
So the nature of the human mind, though, is to attempt to stabilize things, to fix things, to assign qualities to things that then we can hold on to. The human mind is trying to filter out these massive numbers of items that are coming at us, or appear to be coming at us, in order to just be able to navigate survival. So the human mind is looking for stability. It's a warning system against potential danger. Right? So here we are, thank you, a particular identity that we have, that we are a person fixed. Me, Lindsay Crouse. That's who I am. And yet, I'm a different person than I was an hour ago. And I don't really worry about that idea until one day I'll look in the mirror and there's something else on my face that I didn't see. Wait a minute. As you get this experience when you're older, you start to believe in magic. You start to believe that the elves can really go to work at night. You cannot understand it. How did it happen? I never had that thing above my eyebrow when I smile. I never had that, ever. Where did it come from? But you start to have to surrender to the fact that these changes are going on constantly in your body. It's just one day. You notice, right? So when things happen in a way that we don't like, in a way we are in a fight with, in a war with, these forces that we see outside of us, the world coming at us, famine coming at us, the bad economy coming at us, the newspaper coming at us, that makes us feel overwhelmed. It's us against the world. We even see spirituality as a kind of a fight between good and evil, God and the devil. In Buddhism, the sky-going angels versus the armies of Mara. We posit divine figures like Christ or Buddha or Muhammad who battled the devil, tempted, battled the devil, had to overcome these things in this kind of war-like situation. But ultimate spirituality doesn't have anything to do with a battle or a fight. It's the end of duality. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about tonight are a few solutions. The way to surf the wave. We look upon certain circumstances that appear to come at us in our lives as bummers, as tragedies. If only that hadn't happened. Our lives can literally stop We can be caught for years in that regret, in that grief, in that depression. If that hadn't happened, everything would have been okay. Nothing, though, is fixed according to Buddhism and according to modern quantum physics. Nothing is fixed. There is no such thing as a bad event, no matter what it looks like. There is no such thing as a perfect event or person, no matter what they look like. When we try to fix a person as bad or good, very often we discover that later on in life it reverses itself. Perhaps we divorce the person that we vowed to spend our lives with and we thought were so incredible. Perhaps we become closest friends with someone who was our arch enemy. Right? It can go upside down. If the person was essentially one way, that couldn't happen. If the person had a fixed nature, that couldn't happen. Right? So, let's say something happens to us and we're extremely upset about it. We lost a job, we didn't get into the school we wanted to get into, we lost a loved one. Something about the plan for our lives did not work out. And we're overwhelmed by a feeling. We really feel we're not going to be able to live it. We're not going to be able to bear it, handle it. In that moment, if we can just take a second, just a split second, to ask ourselves, to say, first of all, this is not a fixed situation. This is not in itself as terrible as the qualities that I'm ascribing to it. It couldn't be. Nothing is. Nothing is. And let me just take one split second, just a breath, to go underneath our story about it. As an actor, I can tell you, I learn a lot about life. Because a playwright understands that we never say what we mean. The only times we say what we mean, we can count on our fingers in our life. It's usually around a death, a birth, the night we're asked to, get married, the divorce, right? Some horrendous, huge, or extraordinarily wonderful event in our lives, the birth of a baby. It kind of cracks through the masks. And we're actually lined up, body and mind and soul, and we're saying what we mean. Playwrights know we don't say what we mean. So a playwright's language is sort of floating, and underneath it is a hidden story that an actor has to find. And that's where we work. Not in the words, but underneath them, with what the words are intending to do. And we're free to interpret that, which is why there can be many interpretations of a play or of a screenplay, right? And not just one. It's not fixed. Same thing in our lives. Same thing in our lives. We are actually free when something happens to us to write a story about it. And very often we refer to historical stories that we've been dragging around, like Scrooge in Dickens, carrying the chains of Christmas past. We've been carrying them around, and when something happens, we go there again. And we bring that story again. We put that filter right on top of the event. And we go, oh my God, it's happening again. Oh my God, I was always the stupid one. Oh my God, I was always the slow one. Oh my God, I will never, etc., etc., etc. And we start writing, we start playwriting. And we cast ourselves, and there's no way out. If we can take one moment and be brave enough, because we're full of feeling at that moment. And one of the reasons we're writing the story is because we think the feeling is going to kill us. We want to get a handle on something that we're familiar with. And the familiarity might be something pretty wretched. I'm the stupidest one in the family. I never get it right. I'm always screwing up. Nobody likes me. I'm always the one left out. Right? We all have these stories. You know, there might be one that's our most precious kind of version of ourselves. And we grab it. Because, frankly, we prefer it to the feeling. Then we can start, you know, grabbing our friends together and blaming something outside of us. Then the war begins. It wasn't me, this is something that happened, it's so random, it's so terrible, and I'm a victim. Right? And then the version of our victimhood is being written by us as fast as we can go. Okay? Am I being clear? Okay. We can take a split second before the story starts to play. We're not a player piano. We're alive, and we have choices. And the moment that event happens and we're flooded with the feeling is just an energy. It's not fixed. It doesn't have a bad or good in it either, no matter what it feels like. It's just energy. It's just, you know, the cells reacting, the blood flowing, the heart pumping. It's we who ascribe the badness to that. I'm blushing. Oh my God, I failed again. I'm so shy. Why can't I ever stand up for myself? Whatever. The blood is just in the cheeks. We can stay right there. All right? And just stay with the energy. Staying not meaning a static thing. Breathing at whatever level you have to breathe at, just like a good actor on the stage. Sometimes I'm so terrified on the stage, I can't even tell you. And I have to like just breathe so that I can, and just bend parts, just be alive. You know, just be there alive. Be present to what's happening in me, which is fear. It will stop, something else will happen. But if I get so terrified with the story behind it, oh my God, I'm a bad actor, I can never get over this, good actors are never frightened. Oh my God, why can't I get it together? Something's wrong, I didn't rehearse enough, I'm lazy, blah, 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 and there I go. Okay, I am trapping myself in the worst way. And then usually on the heels of that, because it's so unbearable, I could have, if I had had more rehearsal, that goddamn director and blah, 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 blah. And then we push it off on somebody else, and then the war begins. Me against the world, and you're not going to win. You're not going to win. Because you're not going to find agreement with that story. Because there isn't anybody on earth that wants to be described as your enemy. They're not going to agree. Because everybody feels as if they're innocent to their own experience. And in a way, that's true. Because until we get a hold of a way to create the experiences that we would like to have, with a view towards all beings being happy, we are, in a way, victims of our own stuff. But we're victims. We don't realize that we are creating our own sad situation. Once we get a little bit of an education that if things are changing constantly, if things are what they call in Buddhism empty of having a fixed reality, that the world is not like a movie set. I love this image. Having been on movie sets, I know how plastic they are. And having grown up in the theater, my father was a playwright, I used to love going on stage and then walking behind stage and seeing how ridiculous the whole thing is. You know, you could put your hand through the wall. The door doesn't really work. The doorknob is painted. You know, it's just a sham. It's that thin.
It's an illusion.
It's an illusion. What we call real at any given point on any given day is an illusion, in the sense that it is only real for us. Okay.
So for people who raise their hands and said they've never walked into that, just what we're not saying, I don't think what Lindsay is saying, is that means, because it's an illusion that it doesn't exist. We're not positing, what they call nihilism here, that nothing exists. We're just saying that they don't exist the way we think they do. And that's what constricts our world. It gets tough, and we put the walls up, and all of a sudden we don't feel like we have options. When the truth is, everything is available to us all the time. I mean, in terms of that spaciousness, we can reclaim it at any time. So what we're saying is yeah, sure, Lindsay's glasses are real, but if you go looking for the thing you think is out there, it's really hard to find. As a scientist breaks it down, they tell you, well, where are the glasses? Are they out here? Well, if they are, let's find where the glasses are. Do the glasses have parts? Are the glasses one thing or many things? We can start to look at it and say, well, it's got an arm, and it's got a red side here, and it's got a clear side there, and then the red side has a front of the red side and the back. And of course, if you're a molecular scientist, man or woman, you'd say, and I can break that down, and I can keep going down the rabbit hole. So where are the glasses? All we're saying is they don't exist out there the way we think they do. They exist as our perfect mental construction of a thing that we label and call glasses. And that's all we're doing with everything. We're scanning them, we're using our sense consciousness, we're seeing them. I see glass, I scan it, like Arnold in a movie where he looks at it and it all goes into the computer, and I did take a glass of liquid. And once I look at it, I can verify that it's not an eggplant or an avocado or something. My mind works really quick. I say, okay, I can call this a glass of a glass because it functions as a glass. But there's no glass out there other than all the glass that I can perceive, and no person might perceive it exactly the same way. You might all say, well, of course you do. Everyone will come in here and say it's a glass until my dog comes in here and sees it and says, wow, it's a really good place to hide my bone. It's a bone cabinet. Right? And you say, well, it's because it's a stupid dog. That's the only reason the dog would think that. But is the dog wrong? Does it function as a bone cabinet? Is that the dog? We would say the dog has the karma to see things as a dog and have that perception. So is it a glass or a bone cabinet? I ask you, what is it? Both. It could be both. Depends on who you are. And that's all we're saying. I just don't want you to think we're sitting here saying, oh, things don't exist, because they're empty. So, walk in front of the bus. It'll hurt. Because things function. We're not saying they don't work. We're not saying they don't function. But we're saying they don't exist the way they think they do. And that goes for situations and people and wars and countries. Because when you go looking for that thing that you labeled, it breaks down. You can't find it. And guess what else that goes for? Me. The me, I think, is this or that as Lindsay would say, I've written a whole script about that me and cast people to engage me in the play of my life about it. If I go looking for that person, it's changing every second. And then there's the doctors or the physicists who say, like, every cell in your body changes, and like in 7 years everything's changed over. So are you just your body? And you say, well, yeah, I have a connection. But am I my body literally? Well, if Lindsay cuts my finger off, I don't think I will. I don't think I'm going to cease to exist. Right? If I look at the parts of my body and say, well, it's one thing, right? If I take a piece of it away, where do I go? So we have to start thinking a little more deeply about, how our things are existing. And they're existing as our perfect mental image of something, but they're not out there. Just like the boss who's a jerk is not self-existently the jerky boss. I mean, for people who've been here a lot, it's like, oh God, it's either the pen or the glasses or the jerky boss, right? And you might think to yourself, no. I come home and I say to Lindsay, God, Bill wasn't work today. And she goes, yeah, well, Bill's okay. I said, no, you don't know Bill. Like I know Bill. Bill's a jerk. And she's like, well, what happened? Well, he was all over me at work, and he just rang, he kind of walked me in and gave me a bad critique and said I wasn't doing this or that. Well, maybe Bill was trying to get hold of you. She said, no, Bill was out to get me, right? And so we have these stories and we cast Bill, right? But what happened is, so what we're saying is if there was a Bill out there that existed as the world's biggest schmuck, right, then everyone would have to see Bill that way. Even the dog, right? If he was like the Cape Ann Lighthouse Beach lighthouse, it's like sending out the signal, broadcasting to everyone its nature or its essence. We would be bound to see it that way, but of course we all know that we don't. That everyone will see it differently or experience it differently. And that's all we're saying. And in any given moment, say the thing that you think exists in that way that's going to, make it impossible to breathe or to move or to see any daylight. At any moment, you have the possibility to have all the spaciousness around you, because the you that you think you are in that situation isn't there either. That's a constantly changing thing too, right? And a Buddhist would say, and your Buddha nature sees that you are empty of being anything one way or the other that way. Not saying you're not here, but saying, but you're not stuck. You're never stuck. You've never been stuck. There's no you that was ever stuck in that way. So you can relax, right? You can lighten up, right? When it's tight, it's like, I think of Houdini and stuff, where he did all, they tie him up and they truss him up, and he never got out by fighting it. He found ways to incredibly relax his body and slip through the knots. It wasn't by getting tense. It's like a garden hose, right? You get tense and all the flow stops, everything stops, and then the constriction starts, and then you feel trapped. But if you can just, like Lindsay said, put your foot in the door a little bit when you feel it start to slam, using your wisdom foot. using your wisdom foot. Stick it in the door. Create a little bit of space. Right? Mind the gap, right? And there's concepts about karma and how things are occurring and how we're perceiving them. But a moment to say, wait a minute, this isn't my only option, and it's all going to change. Just like when you say, I'm unhappy today. Well, do a little meditation next time you're unhappy and close your eyes and try to find the moment you became unhappy. What was the moment you became unhappy? And then, was it unattenuated unhappiness? It's just like, it was like unhappiness came and descended on me and it's unabated, right? Or is it modulating, like sound, or like anything else that's changing, right? And does it come and go? So are you your unhappiness? Or are you just experiencing, like Lindsay said, or you're feeling it? You can start to see some options about it, and that things are changing. And like Lindsay said, I always call it the playground alliance thing about your friends. It's like, when you're a kid and you're on the playground in 1st or 2nd grade, you have one little group like before lunch, and they're all hanging out in the playground and running together, and that's like those guys. And then there's another alliance that happens like after lunch, and then you're with the other group, and it's changing all the time. We're like on an elevator, going up and down, and so don't get so attached to the situation or the person or the place, because it's going to change. It's going to change, right? And then if you're out, if you're positing that maybe this isn't the only life that you could have, then you'd say if things have been changing forever and our perceptions have been causing us to have different permutations, then they'd say, well, we've been everything to everybody. So your friends have been your enemies have been your friends. You've been the highest, you've been the lowest. Relax. And don't think, don't think you're different than other people.
One of the things I find in a domestic marriage, in a long-term relationship, is that Rick will start to say something, and I will jump because I think he's about to do one thing, and I'm reacting to something that he hasn't even done yet. And after I've had this reaction, he's like, whoa, what are you doing all over me here? Like, I was just trying to, and I go, oh, I had no idea. I thought you were doing. And we're we're like ships just missing. We're just missing. I'm writing the story so fast. And then, the poor actor hasn't even gotten on the stage. But we do this constantly. We are, our minds are moving all the time, fabricating, as they say, fabricating things, imagining what is possibly going to happen, trying to avert it, trying to protect ourselves from it. And again, there's a kind of me versus you way of living. As a bodhisattva, as someone who's on a spiritual path, our job is to learn to let go, to surrender. Someone has been educating me for the last number of years about the following thing, and I've really tried to really sincerely learn it, not only from my spiritual teacher, but from other people, psychiatrists, people in my family, friends, etc. And I'm having to hear it over and over in many different ways because I have such resistance to it. How do we commune with other people? How do we get through to somebody else? What is it that happens when we get through to somebody else? Do we get through to somebody else trying to explain how we feel? What does that mean to somebody else that we try to do that? In a moment when we are having difficulty or we're extremely afflicted, can we soften and let go a minute, just a minute? Stop the war. I want to get off, right? Get off one moment. And just ask ourselves, what am I bringing to the party here? Is it going to be useful? Will it make me happy? Am I bringing an old script? Am I hanging out in the old club? Is this historical data here? Or am I really alive to something that is fresh and could be new? But mainly, will this make me happy? Because one of the things that Buddha taught is that everything that we think, that we say, and that we do in the present is creating our future for us. How could that not be so? If I lie in the present moment, I continue lying, somebody's not going to believe me. I mean, it just makes sense. Our actions now have consequences for our future. We're painting our future life by what we do now. If we continue with the same old stories that we're carrying around about our families, about our friends, about our loved ones, about the people at work, and we're trying to, in a way, bring a kind of victimhood everywhere we go. Don't you understand who I am and what I feel? How much I've suffered, how difficult this is, or how whatever, or how heroic I've been, whatever the story is. We're not necessarily going to make ourselves happier by doing that, and we're not necessarily going to appear to be the cause of happiness to other people, and therefore they're not necessarily going to want to hold us in that. Stay there for that. Be willing to participate in that. We have to take the teachings, the great teachings that we hear, whether it's from, Christianity or Judaism or Islam or Buddhism. We have to be prepared to really pay the price in the local mint, who we are in that moment. There's only one thing to do, which is different from anything we've ever done before, which is to soften the hard edges of our stories. The way that we're convinced that the world is coming at us, that it's against us, that it's hurting us, that it's costing us. And just open and stay for a moment. Hang out there where it's uncomfortable. Opening to a possibility that perhaps this is not the only way to look at the situation. That alone is revolutionary. Just revolutionary. Look at the unbelievable patience of a Martin Luther King. I mean, it's unbelievable, that degree of patience. But I listened once to a sermon that he gave at the height of the civil rights movement, at the height of how, oh my God. I mean, most of us that have grown up in the North don't even know what that was like. Hatred, just hatred, like someone wanted to kill you, hatred. Surrounding the church in Birmingham, just angry whites surrounding the church in Birmingham, and nobody knowing what was about to happen, explosive kind of tension and heat. In the summer of 60-something, I can't remember, 8?
For them,
Three?
they killed him in
63. 63. 63, the year Kennedy was killed. And him just saying over and over again, Lord, we are discouraged. Lord, we are discouraged. Just staying there with the feelings, just staying there, right? Repeating it over and over like a mantra, just letting the moment breathe. Not jumping on it, telling them what to do, you know, rebel-rousing, etc. And in that sermon, he said, we have to forgive. We have to forgive the white man, if only because God forgives him. And God loves him too. See, it's the joining up, it's the unity that he was bringing people to. Not there's a them and there's an us, and we have to do something about this, and damn it, blah, 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 blah. It was bringing everyone into the great uncomfortable place. These people who appear to be so different than me, these people who have, you know, killed my children or lynched my grandfather or whatever, the only thing for it is to be able to stay in these uncomfortable feelings and return to the possibility that there's another way to it.
And the notion that there is no more these people on that side than there's these people on this side. See, there's no these people out there either. And I think he was a good logician too, because where was peace going to break out from violence? You know, do you think that after 5,000-10,000 years of perfecting warfare to its highest degree in our material society, that we'd find a way to like make it work? To have peace break out from war? If it was going to happen, it might have happened. How can two totally dissonant things? You know, Buddhists say that karmically that causes and results have to have some relationship with each other, right? And that's not a Buddhist idea, right? Jesus said it. I mean, all great thinkers have said it. Scientists say it. I mean, you know, if you're going to go to your garden tomorrow and plant an apple tree, you know, I'm not going to be able to talk you into putting avocado seeds in the ground and thinking your apple tree is going to pop out, because you know they have to be related. So how can it be related? That violence will be the way to peace, say, that hatred will be the way to love, and so it's a hard road to take, you know. But these are all ideas. These are all like concepts you throw at a talk. But I always say, you know, so where's happiness coming from? You know, it can't come from unhappiness. Probably. It's not going to break out from it. But do the little test. You know, when you see the iPhone 6 coming down the horizon, you know, do a little test. You know, how pumped are you to say, man, if I get the iPhone 6, it's going to be so awesome. It's going to be great. I'm going to be able to do this, and Siri will now speak 20 different languages, and I can fly a plane with it or whatever, you know. And you invest in it, right? And you invest in it. And then you get it, right? Or the new car, if I only had this model of the car, or the girlfriend, or the whatever, right? And then you know, you overestimate its value while you fantasize about it. You know, when you're dating in love, she's the greatest. Everything she says is perfect. She smells like 1,000 roses. She looks like a shining star. Right? You know, you overestimate to the degree, to other people's exclusion too, right? Right. And then what happens is you know, so you buy the new iPhone. I'm going to use the iPhone. I might be dumb, but I'm not stupid. I realized I was just heading down alley. You know, and when I got my new car, I mean, my teacher, I bought a new car, and he was at our house teaching that night. And he's like, oh man, that's a cool car. I finally like did the sensible midlife crisis thing. I bought a convertible in California, right? So I could like pop the top down, drive along the beach. But it was like a Saab convertible. So for you back east people, it goes in snow, it's got heated seats, sensible. And you know, he starts saying, oh, that's such a cool car, I'll do a drive or this or that. And so then the talk starts that night on renunciation. And for years, people would say, dude, he just like tore you apart in that tape. He literally then used me as a teaching tool and said, oh yeah, you know, so the thing you think's going to change your life, my new Saab convertible, and went on. And I'm like, glad to help. And then it was like a couple of years later, it was funny, we were at the house or something, and he says, how come we don't go around in your car? We're not driving around. And I'm like, you know, he says, I love your car, you know. You know, but the point is that, you know, so that car that was so great that my wife reminds me that night I asked her to move her car from under the trees just for a day so my new car wouldn't get stuff on it. And then, you know, it's the greatest thing ever. It's going to make me happy. But so do a little test. And then, you know, you get the first scratch in it, and then it starts to rust out a little, and 6 years later there's a new model out, and the next thing is like, I got to unload this thing. It's killing me. It's like a boat, they say. You know, the best moments are the day you get it, buy it, and the day you get rid of it. You all know that here, right? You want to simulate the experience, stand in the shower, and drop dollar bills down the drain. You know, but we do, and if only we can get it. So check in with that. And like the things where we say, oh, things are changing, and we throw some statistic out 3 trillion times a second, right? But what happens when, you know, I go home and there's a talk coming, right? And I turn on the iPad and it doesn't boot up. The degree to which you're pissed, the degree to which you feel betrayed and shocked, is the degree to which you're buying into the fact that things aren't changing. Was there ever a day that it wasn't going to boot up your computer, your car wouldn't start, or, you know, your knee wouldn't get creaky maybe or something, you know? But we feel, you know, so that's the emptiness meter, I always call. The degree to which you're totally blown away by when it happens is the degree to which you're buying into the fact that it is out there, that you forgot. Say, you forgot. You forgot. So the more that you can use meditation, the more that you can use these ideas of sticking your foot in the door and creating a gap, is that you can keep yourself from being so stunned. All right? We're not saying that when something happens unpleasant, that it's not an unpleasant experience. You know, we're not saying that, oh, now that you study this, you should never have a moment that's tough, or to have the feelings. We're saying just the opposite. You know, they'll come and they'll go, and you'll have them, but you're not them. So you can't hold on to them. The degree to which we want to either hold on what's making us happy, or push away what's making us, you know, the aversion to things we don't want near us, is the degree to which we're reifying the world. And of course, you know, and then the last is examine your worldview. My teacher always told me this, you know, he's a pretty good comparative religion, philosophy guy, and he had a great teacher, and he always said there's only 3 worldviews that he could come up with. He says, if you come up with a 4th, let me know, and we'll talk about it. And the first is like, you know, the worldview of there's some all-powerful force out there that is micromanaging everything. The all-creator force that's creating you, everything you do, you know, your arm moving up, everything you experience, right? And so that's the way it goes down, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is the opposite, that everything is random. That just S happens. It's random. It's all random. That's a pretty hard worldview to hold on to, because I think if it was, we probably wouldn't send our kids to school, for one thing, because we would believe that there's no causal connection between 1st grade and 2nd grade. There's nothing's going to carry forward, and why do we keep, you know, we believe in a progression. And the third is that things are all in a causal dependent relationship. That everything is related. That causes come from prior causes. That the things we do affect other things we do. And then we tiptoe between them all. You know, it's always like, what is it? He always says the plane, right? So, you know, maybe you never spent a day in church or thinking about, you know, the God or powers, and then they call and they say, you know, this is the name of our talk. Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts. emergency landing, and then all of a sudden you immediately get on the phone to God and try to cut a deal, right? I promise, just get me on that tarmac, man, and I'll change it all, right? And then a day goes by, and then we forget, and then we're back, everything reasserts itself. Crisis over, right? That's the other thing. It's okay now, until the next crisis, right? Or the thing you label a crisis. And the other is, the other jumping into the worldview is we both go down to the CVS and buy a lottery ticket, right? And we scratch it off, and Lindsay gets like the 10,000. Oh, that's just luck. That's just dumb luck. Random that she won. Why didn't I win? Then I'm now into everything's just random. Or the third one. So, but I'm being kind of silly, but think about it. Think about the worldview that you think is working for you, and then analyze it. And think about, maybe it's combinations of them for you, but think about how the world is working. We rarely think about what the hell is going on. We rarely put our mind to it. We want to block it out or not think about it, and that's why, one pitch for what our summer retreat is based on is going to be all about like concepts of living a mindful, meditative life. Spend some time thinking about it. How surprised are you when something breaks down? And then think about it. Wasn't it always someday going to not work? Didn't it come into place from causes and conditions, and then it has like a resonance and energy, a karma to keep it going, and then it will dissipate. Is that abnormal? Is it abnormal? See, the degree to which we're shocked is we're thinking, no, that's aberrant, that's wrong. Maybe what the Buddha was saying, that your enlightenment doesn't mean that you're beaming into Alpha Centauri or another place where everything is good. When he says we live in a samsaric realm, maybe he means we live in a realm where we can't get in touch with that purest, highest aspect of ourselves that allows us to be content and be able to live in that world with a different perspective. And maybe that's the karmic shift of perception that puts you in a pure life. But maybe it's not on exit 40 off the 128 out there. Maybe it's right here, and it's always been right here.
Let me just pick up on that. Yeah. This is great. Because what I'm trying to say is that whatever the experience that you're having, whether you describe it as a good experience or as a terrible experience, it's equal opportunity for you to just take a second and think, usually our pain is psychological, right? Usually it's from the mind. It's from an old story. And if you get in touch with it in a moment, you'll almost hear yourself talking to yourself. It's ancient history, and it's very familiar ground. Just take a moment and breathe. Just breathe. We want to try to just shake that up a little bit. Just stop thinking about that as reality. It's a story. And we can write a different story. And just to unpack a little, to say it in a more refined way about you can't commune with someone out of just saying how you feel. Usually we're speaking how we feel out of a story. And out of being a victim in a story. And how we ought to be treated a certain way, and about how that person has it wrong, or if only they understood, or if only people understood, or whatever. Nobody gives a damn about that kind of story. And that's truth, with a capital T. Nobody cares. Because nobody can really get inside that story because it only belongs to you. It's not a universal story. Stories in the theater, for instance, that have real impact, they may be very specific. But the thing that makes them ring is that they're redeeming. Is that when people hear them, something softens, something opens, and there's a new possibility. That people walk out of the theater going, well, if that person could do it, I can do it, whatever. And you get that moment where your hair stands on end with the group, and you just go, okay, I've got new strength now because I saw this happen. That's what I'm talking about when you rewrite in a moment. Can you imagine If you just dropped down tonight onto the planet and began to relate to people, you wouldn't have all this history with them. How fresh it would be. How curious you would be. It's that kind of curiosity, the kind of curiosity of a scientist, to explore that moment when you're having the reactivity like crazy and you think you're going to die from it. You're not going to die from it. Breathe. Hold on just for a second and ask yourself, do I want to replay history? If I keep strengthening this habit of mine, isn't it going to bring me just more and worse of this next year? And what about 5 years down the line? Because that's the truth. It will bring you more and better of what you're bringing to the party now. Has it worked in the past? Right? And just stay. Just breathe. Just open for a moment, as if you had just landed fresh. Is there another way to go? Is there another possibility? Or are you rerunning the same film over and over again?
Now, the one idea that we haven't really jumped into too deeply, especially for new people, is that we're also, talking about this thing we call karma, which is very discussed and sometimes misunderstood. So what we're saying is, in any given moment when I choose, if the angry boss is in my face, right, I can choose to chew him out twice as bad. Maybe that'll make him go away. I can hit him. Maybe that'll make him go away. I can get him a cup of tea or apologize. Maybe that'll work. Right? What we say is, in the moment, actually, karma, everything you've done in the past has delivered this moment to you. So you can't. It's like a flower that has just come up out of the ground. You can't shove it back in the ground. But what I do in the moment will dictate how I experience things in the future. So, right, because things aren't coming from there, they're coming from here. We would say that these experiences are ripenings of our karma, which isn't this thing out there that's flying around like a boomerang hitting us. On a better level, I'd say that karma is the process that is you. Always, everything you've said or done, the sum total of you in any given moment, and the field of potential that particular karma will ripen it. All right. But what you do in the moment is you can say, I don't like that this person, I'm having this encounter. It's not pleasant, and I don't like it. So you don't say it's not happening and it's not pleasant. It isn't pleasant. It's not pleasant to be yelled at by someone. Right? But where's it coming from? We would say it's coming from all the times in the past I've created a world and that I've subscribed to where I've done that to other people. And that's why I can recognize it in the way that I do. And so I don't want to experience it in the future. So the least skillful thing that I can do is to turn around and do the same thing. Then I'll turn the wheel again, like an echo going out over the canyon, and it bounces back. And you know what an echo's like, right? It reflects over all of the relief of the world that you've created, and it comes back amplified. Karma grows, they say. The results grow. Not only the negative things, but the positive things. So that was kind of the underpinning of some of the things we're talking about when you have a moment. To create that gap is to also choose, If there's not a world out there coming at me, and I participated in the creation of this world, I can participate in my future moment by not getting so hung up on the present moment, which harkens back to the idea of when bad things happen or you're having a bad day, that karma has ripened. If you don't want to experience it again, choose carefully how you're going to act now. And then they say, if your karma comes to you as, what do you by? Your past actions, deeds, and thoughts. So that when somebody's like pushing your buttons and trying your patience, instead of looking at it as a self-existently bad experience, if you say, I'm getting a perfect teaching right now, right? If I was blind and couldn't see anything, and if there were no mirrors in the world and I couldn't see myself, let's say that, how would I get an image of myself? Well, I could use all of the people out there and the experiences I'm having as a mirror to tell me exactly what I need to do. So in the moment, is the person pushing my buttons self-existently a nightmare, or someone who's teaching me what I need to do? I need to be patient. I need to be patient. I'm getting a teaching. And what if it actually, whether you believe in that or not, what if it actually causes me the next time to be patient? The next time to act in that way? How is it going to make you feel? Better or worse? Even if you didn't believe in any of it. What's more fun? Right? To come home and crab and be a pain in the ass? Or to take some interest in your family and maybe listen to them a little bit and maybe be patient with them. Maybe be a little kinder and more compassionate. See? So happiness doesn't come from somewhere out there. Your happiness comes from being kind to other people. That's where it comes from. That's how you get it. So if, and this is not a Buddhist thing, and it sounds trite. If you want something, make sure someone else gets it. Be really conscious of it and mindful of it. If you want the last muffin at Starbucks and you're always jonesing for it and you're all uptight about it when you see there's 3 people ahead of you and there's 1 left, make sure they get it. Because it might sound crazy, but that's where they come from.
This is like the ultimate relatedness, the ultimate lack of loneliness. You all right?
Yes! I have decided to exhibit myself as the small, annoying turbulence that we need now to decide if it is worth taking these actual precious moments that are about to end at 9:30 for me to have this fun with you or not. Thank you, that's my entrance.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, just the last couple of things I'd like to say. An interesting thing happens when you observe something. There was a friend of great teacher Pema Chodron who was ill and who had to have a lot of shots. And he was terrified of shots, and every time he had the shots, he fainted. So he wasn't looking forward to his treatments, and neither were the people treating him looking forward to him being there. And he decided to do an experiment to really look into fainting. So as he went to the doctor, he observed how he was feeling, he observed the buildup of his fear, he observed the nature of his heart rate, he observed how his skin felt, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As he got to the doctor's and the nurse approached him with the shot, he didn't faint. There is a profound consequence when you are in meditation and you sit in observance of your thoughts and your feelings as opposed to having them drive your life. You can't find them. They kind of slip around. Where is that feeling? Is it in my tummy? Well, no, it doesn't seem to be in my tummy. Well, actually, I'm feeling okay now. Oh, no, I'm not feeling okay. You're in the midst of the changingness of it, and it isn't what you thought. My final thing I really want to say, and this is so important, and I hope to be teaching on this in the future. Don't waste our lives, I say this to myself too, in bad opinions of ourselves. We need to learn to take care of ourselves. It's one of the greatest things that we could do for everyone. Our happiness is the most important thing that we can give to the world. Describing ourselves as not qualified for that, or as lesser than others, or as stupid, or as whatever. Failing again, even if we're on a path. Oh, I didn't do my blah, blah, blah today. Oh, I can't meditate. Oh, I'm blah, blah, blah. That was unkind. I just, whatever. Practice rejoicing. It's not easy. Practice rejoicing in what you're doing well, in the goodness that's in you. It's your nature. Your nature, according to Christ, according to Moses, according to all of them, Buddha, everyone, is that you have a pure, unadulterated inner nature. It's just obscured by a lot of misunderstanding. Make your schedule sane. That would be transformative for everyone around you. not just you. Make it sane. You know, they say about caretakers, they often get rewarded in hospitals, for instance, for taking on more and more and more until they become so numb that they don't even see how dysfunctional the system is. Helping can get to a neurotic level too. You have a God-given right to live your life sweetly and happily, knowing what it is you need. If you need a nap, take a nap and tell everybody to let school keep. Knowing that that's what's good for all of you. It's so important to observe the kind of story you're writing about yourself. See if you can begin to write the story that you are a good human being, that you are attempting to do good in the world, that you have as the highest goal the happiness of everyone. And if on any given day you feel that you're able to achieve all you want to achieve or not, when you get into bed at night, you count your acts of goodness instead of sheep, right? And you observe the goodness in others, and you speak to them about that. I had a letter today, a couple of carpets haven't arrived in my house, and the story's coming up, well, you know, they've got a lot of nerve. I ordered this 2 weeks ago, blah, 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 blah. Another carpet from the same company came on time, and blah, 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 blah. Right? I can hear it. It's like this, I don't know who this character is, you know? And I wrote last night to people in the company, and I tried, because of these practices, you know, to keep my tone even, to open to the possibility that I could have made a mistake in the order, right? Okay? I get a letter back this morning saying, well, you may not have noticed that when you ordered it said, this is a custom rug, and it takes 2 weeks longer than the others to come. I'm like, oh, whoops, I didn't notice. So I wrote back and I said, thank you so much for responding so quickly. This is entirely my fault. I didn't see. But I have really enjoyed the rugs that I bought from your company. And I've noticed with the other ones I've ordered, they've come immediately. Plus, when I had a problem with one of them, you responded quickly again, and you were so kind, and said that if I wanted to return the rug, you would refund my money or get me another rug. And you're all very attentive, and thank you. It's crummy to live without a rug, you know, and you're helping me. And this person wrote back the sweetest letter. There's a person at the other end of everything. Just like, you know, in this bloody corporate electronic world, we can forget. Mm-hmm. And they thanked me. Mm-hmm. Right? And I felt this moment, this wave of warmth that overrode the rug and all the problems with the rug. Right? It just overrode it all. That's where we'd like to live. And we can't live in that kind of warmth and immediacy with other people if we're so rattled and so stressed and in such a hurry that boom, 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 everything has to happen in seconds, and right? Really, try to look at your schedule that you make for yourself each day and feel you have the right to live a sane and sweet life. And take the time it takes for you. This is your life. All right? We want to be a gift to others. But first, we have to think of ourselves. I mean, it's kind of a natural law. Like on the airplane, you have to give yourself the oxygen, you know, or nobody's going to live.
It is. I was just wondering whether it was worth reading this thing, because I think this is a question people have a lot, and it came up. I was looking at a book. There's a great master named Lama Yeshe. He's a great master. For those of you who know, it was Lama Zopa's our teacher, and he was doing a workshop on you know, life, death, things like that. And someone asked him a question, and I just thought it was about bumpy moments, and I thought it was kind of cool. So it's very quick, and I thought I'd read his answer. Someone said, how can we keep our minds clear and happy with so much suffering around us? People ask that question all the time, but how can I be happy? How can I think about it? And this is 1983, I think. He gave a really cool answer, I thought. He says, the question is just an excuse. After the guy asked the question immediately, so it's just an excuse. What you're saying is, I'm unhappy and dissatisfied because so many other people are unhappy and dissatisfied. He says, that's not logical. He said, you could hear it as voice, you're responsible for your own happiness. You're responsible for your own satisfaction. You're responsible, He says, I want you to understand this. Some people have the misconception, how can I be satisfied? While others are hungry and dissatisfied. That's wrong thinking. If you have sympathy, love, and compassion for all these people, that will bring you more satisfaction. But normally we react to other suffering with emotion. We become emotionally disturbed or disabled. That's not really compassion. That's just an emotional reaction based on a misunderstanding of the situation. A correct understanding of the situation produces loving kindness. And as a result of that is more happiness and joy rather than misery. So your question, to me, indicates faulty logic. Many people ask this kind of thing. For example, you can say, how can people in the world live in peace when there's war, killing, and bloodshed in the Middle East? My opinion is that's the wrong question. Of course we can say that. Relatively speaking, you can ask this question, but scientifically it's wrong. You can be satisfied and content even though others aren't. For example, Shakyamuni Buddha renounced I did the word thing where I talk and I typed. The condition of samsara, maybe, acted appropriately and achieved the enlightened experience. That was due to his own great effort and personal development. In the meantime, we're still here with our limited compassion, our limited thinking. So it's completely up to the individual. If you act for peace, you get peace. If you put yourself on the path to misery, you end up miserable. But all that does not mean that you should not have sympathy for others either. He says sympathy for others brings you satisfaction and happiness, not misery. Interesting, because he's getting into causes relating to each other. So of course you be aware of it, you try to alleviate the suffering of others, but by having compassion and kindness, you don't get misery from your compassion and your kindness. You get happiness. And if you're happy, right, if the world is a mirror of the way you're acting, the more you send out, the more the world will have to shift to accommodate the way you're seeing it from your perspective. And that's how you change the world.
So assume differently. Assume that other people can understand you. Because if you're speaking out of your feelings in a way of silently, you don't understand, I feel blah, 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 blah. What's heard is not the words, just like the good playwright knows. What's heard is what you're doing. If you can drop down for a moment and just eliminate the story, let the feelings play through you, and then listen and participate with another person on a fresh ground, knowing that the two of you want exactly the same things in the world. You want to be happy and you want not to suffer. And you share that. You share that as your human birthright together. And all of us are succeeding and failing at it in any given moment. Right? But just to be open and settled and sane, you can listen rather than constantly repeating your version of how things should go.
And if you're interested, we're going to be teaching this August 13th through the 18th up at Governor's Academy at the summer retreat. There's also a meditation instruction you can get here at the center, and you can go onto the wisdomsheart.org website and find out about it. There's wonderful teachers, because by creating this space in sanity, you can kind of quiet your mind enough to get to that other level. That's not the one that's jumping from one thing to the other like a little monkey in a tree. But there's a deeper part of you. This is why the Buddha taught, that he said, I'm not teaching you this because you can't do it. I'm only teaching it because everyone has this capability. The ultimate nature of you is not being stuck in any way. And you couldn't recognize it in others if it wasn't coming from you first. How would you see it? How would you see it? So be responsible for the world by understanding that it's coming from you, and there's things you can do to change that. And it starts, and no act is too small with the right motivation. No act is insignificant. In fact, we can't all be Mother Teresa. We can all run out and do that. But you can start at home, you can start in your community, but mostly you have to start with yourself, because otherwise you're just a hypocrite. If you can't hold yourself with any compassion, with any degree of love, and with any appreciation for the actions you take, you're going to be pretty useless to everybody else. So all those people who push our buttons are our holy teachers. Thank them, be grateful for them, and try to take the lesson.
The summer retreat, we can pick up the postcards. I would like to ask everyone here if you would take some of these postcards, they're small ones out there and large ones, and just put them up someplace. Just drop them on the bank counter. I don't care. Put them up someplace. Someone might pick one up and their life will be changed. We bring our wonderful teacher, Lama Marut, to the summer retreat, and for 6 days he teaches. Other teachers, wonderful teachers, come teach all kinds of things, yoga, tai chi. It's a free place. You can participate in as much as you want or as little as you want. You can lie on the grass and read a book. But it's a place of taking time out to really think and learn how to conduct your life in a way that will make you happier and others happier. And a lot of people in this room have been to this retreat over the 8 years that we've done it. This is our 9th year. And I think to a woman and a man would say that their lives are better for it. It's been an inspiration for all of us. And we have this place really on account of it. So we encourage you to spread the word, and any questions you have about it, please ask us. And thank you for the great honor of teaching you. If we can close our eyes, it's our tradition to dedicate anything good that we've done. They say when you do something good, there's a little bit of residue of maybe I'm so cool, I did something good. And the way to have something is to give it away in all great spiritual traditions. So if we want to receive the good karma, the good effects of what we just did tonight, then we have to give away even that final feeling that what we did was so good. We wouldn't want to keep it and become arrogant. So we dedicate this beautiful couple of hours we've spent with each other. We send up a sincere prayer that everyone, all sentient beings, will find their way to love, to a generous heart, openness, and the possibility that they can be happy than they ever imagined. Peace unto all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.